I did want to talk a little bit about my friend who's referenced in the stream title. So let me get that command out there. So no more Hearthstone today. You can head out if you want. I'm gonna talk just for a little bit, and then I'll raid off to another arena player if you do want to stick around. Yeah. So I would like for this to be conversational. So please feel free to ask questions or make comments in chat as I'm talking. It's a stream. That's my philosophy, is that it's not just me, it's you too. So always happy to make it conversational. If you've had like similar mentors or experiences or whatever, I'd love to hear about them. I haven't planned anything. I guess I'll just talk a little bit about like when and how this person came into my life. I'll call him tallghost because that's his Twitch handle. When I started streaming a couple of years ago, he came to visit me here a couple of times, and I believe I'm remembering that correctly as his handle. And I really appreciated those visits. I have a special place in my heart for anyone in my honest to goodness flesh life who comes and visits the stream. That's like a special thing to me because like they didn't have to come into this place, but they did just to check out what I was doing. So I went to boarding high school. It's something I've mentioned on stream any number of times. It was a very small boarding high school. My older brother went to public school and he didn't really have a good time there. And my parents thought maybe I shouldn't go to public school. Are there other alternatives? And we found this place that cost a lot of money to go to, but we ended up getting me some scholarship money and all that good stuff. And the school was about 200 kids total over the course of 4 grades. So you'd have maybe 50 kids in your class. Very small school. Boggles my mind when I hear about people's high school experiences where they had like thousands of classmates. It's such a different experience for me. But this was like a college prep boarding school. Kind of fancy pants. We had to wear coat and tie to go to class and go to meals and stuff. And when I went there for my first year, I was terrified. I wasn't that far from home, about an hour away from home, so I would go home most weekends. But even still, going out on your own and having some agency over your own life and needing to figure things out on your own for the first time 4 years earlier than you thought that you were going to have to do those things is terrifying. And so there's that breakage of like, I'm on my own now to a certain extent. That's scary. There's being away from home. That's scary. There's going into a new place with new norms. And that's scary for me too as an introvert. It takes me a while to adjust to new environments. And it was a school with a lot of good things about it, but also a lot of really terrible things about it too. So like for example, my first year, I got paired with a roommate who was awful, awful roommate, like a nightmare roommate, like unimaginably bad roommate. He was like mean, selfish, smelly. Like you would walk into my room and you'd be hit with a wall of smell. He just like didn't do his laundry. And so like I think being in that situation was pretty depressing, especially my freshman year sometimes. It just so happened that my freshman year I got placed with tallghost and his wife, who are both teachers, Mr. and Mrs. Ghost, both teachers at this school. I happened to get placed with them as an advisee. They were my semi-randomly assigned advisor. And that was a stroke of luck, because I got to meet them very quickly. And they were like one of the big power couples of my life. You know, the more that you live and the more you see the marriages of people that you know, it's easy to get pretty cynical about marriage. I don't know if you feel this way too, chat, but like the more married couples I met in my life, the more I was like, marriage seems rough, man. These people resent each other. They feel trapped. They bicker. Can you make the jokes about Hogwarts? You will try. You know, people said that I went to college at Haverford, which is connected with Bryn Mawr College. People said Bryn Mawr looked like Hogwarts, like the architecture looked like Hogwarts. So that came up a lot. My high school didn't really look like Hogwarts. It was a relatively small campus. And the architecture was all over the place. You'd have some buildings that are like big industrial blocks and some that were like squat, like old dorms, and some chic new buildings, especially the sports buildings. So this couple, they were both English teachers, and Mr. Ghost taught theater as well, and he was the head of the theater department. And this is a school that did not put any of its resources into the arts, not really. They'd pump all the resources into sports, because if you went to this school, you were either rich or you got good grades, because it was expensive, right? So I happened to get good grades. Most of the other people there were rich. Some of them were like kicked out of their previous boarding schools, right? But if they had enough money, our school would let them in. And so the sports program was big. I think a lot of the school's identity was built on that. Up-to-date facilities, brand spanking new. Meanwhile, the theater is like shunted away in this building decades and decades and decades without any renovation or innovation. As the head of the theater department, Mr. Ghost would put on a play every semester, so like 2 plays a year. And he would have budgets in the hundreds of dollars, like nothing, to put on these plays. And he would just use over and over again the same flats. Flats are like the fake walls that you put up at the back of the stage, and you like paint things on them to make it look like a house or whatever. You just reuse the same old ass flats with layers and layers of paint on them. It sounds like my friend who was at a hockey boarding school whose parents worked there. There's a lot of like nepotism at schools like this. And it's not even hidden. It's very much out in the open. They called it legacy at my school. And you would get preference in admission if you were the kid of somebody who went to the school. It was like a point of pride. Interestingly, my school was an all-boys boarding school, but there was the one exception. You could go to my school if you were a girl whose parents worked for the school. That was the exception. So we did actually have one student during our time who was a girl. She ended up in our friends group because she was sort of into theater, and we also like didn't treat her like shit. But yeah, so Mr. Ghost is kind of the anchor to this teensy weensy little theater department where the misfits tended to collect. So I never have really been into sports. I come from a sports family. I've never been into sports. And here I am going to this school, not really knowing myself that well yet, where sports are heavily emphasized. In fact, you had to take some sport as an extracurricular every semester. You weren't allowed to not do sports. And I very quickly slotted into the social group that was like the theater kids. And like most of my most meaningful experiences in the 4 years at that school were the plays that I was in, that I acted in under Mr. Ghost. Um, like he would do auditions. We would go audition for the play. He'd usually take just about everyone because there were almost never more kids wanting to audition than there were parts in the play that he wanted to do. We did some cool stuff. We did 12 Angry Men. We called it 12 Angry Jurors because we had the one girl in the school was in it. I got to play the old guy in that. Um, I've been cast as a lot of old guys in my life. We did Arsenic and Old Lace. That was really fun. We had some students cross-dressing, which was like radical at the time. Like, oh, these students who are like kind of gay but don't talk about it much because nobody's out at this school are cross-dressing in this comedy, and it's really funny and everyone's loving it, you know. We did Rope. He adapted Hitchcock's Rope so that like we could do it on the stage, and I was the killer in that one. That was fun. Anyway, a lot of like really good memories. And the reason I started acting with them, like I said, is not because I wanted to be an actor. I didn't know that I really wanted to be in theater. It was mostly just because like they didn't treat me like trash, like a lot of the other people in my life had, and I was like, I just want to spend time here with these folks doing this thing. I didn't think I was an amazing actor. In fact, I had crippling stage fright for the first couple of years. I would get like physically ill before going on stage. I don't think I ever threw up, but like queasy. You pictured Dead Poets Society? Yeah, maybe a little bit less inspiring on a day-to-day basis, but close enough. Yeah, so I would act in all these plays, and I got the hang of it after a while. And another aspect of my life that's become really important is writing, creative writing. And he taught my first creative writing class ever. I think that was my senior year. There were maybe 8 kids in the class, and every week or so we would write a short story, go over the stories in class, talk about them. And I have since then taken many creative writing courses. I think it's hard to teach those courses well because art is so subjective, but you also do want to impart succinct, like helpful, actual advice and suggestions. But like writing was something that after that class, I was like, maybe this is something I want to do. I did it for years and fell off and came back to it. And the third thing I want to mention that Tall Ghost had a huge impact on me was when I was growing up, I wasn't allowed to watch rated R movies for like I guess you could say religious reasons. And so I barely ever watched any horror movies because most horror is rated R. And I'd always look lustfully at the rated R horror movies at the video store, the rental store that I wasn't allowed to rent. Anyway, I went away to high school, and Tall Ghost, I found out very quickly, had this huge library of DVDs, and he would rent them out one at a time to any student who was interested. So my best friend and I would constantly be going down to Tall Ghost's office, which was also his apartment, which was in our dormitory, and we would be like asking for recommendations, and he would give us some options, and we'd spend our after school hours and evenings just mainlining DVDs, so many of them horror. And that period of my life was huge for shaping my taste in art and my ability to like express myself through that. Because we would watch these movies and then he would talk to us about them. It wasn't just like watch the movie and here's another one. It was like, what did you think about that? It made me uncomfortable. Why did it make you uncomfortable? What was the movie trying to do? Yes, it was weird, but why was it weird? All these like questions that helped me begin to see that it's not just about consumption, it's about being thoughtful and critical as well. And he taught a movie class, a horror on film class that I took, and that class was really, I remember it being the first time that I understood how much depth there was to art, how many questions there were to ask, how important every little choice was. We watched The Shining in that class, and I remember him talking about like, why are the opening credits this way? It's to build a sense of suspense because we're seeing the car move farther and farther away from civilization, and that suspense is going to be with us the whole movie. You know, why is this one particular camera shot from underneath a chair? It's because the framing of the chair legs makes Wendy feel trapped and claustrophobic in this shot. Stuff like that. Yeah, IRL film rating redemption, exactly. So when I think about my relationship with Mr. and Mrs. Tallghost, I think not just of really loving being around them, but also of all the vistas that they opened up for me personally, professionally, interpersonally. Ways of thinking about and seeing the world I didn't have access to before. And because they were excellent teachers, they never just told us what to think either. They would make fun of us sometimes for having certain points of view, but they never just told us what to think. It was always about trying to give us the tools to get there ourselves. I think that's good teaching in a nutshell. So I went to that school with all sorts of baggage from my conservative upbringing. Like, hey, man, I still had some uncomfortable feelings about gay people, for example, that I'm not proud of, obviously, but that I also didn't choose. It's something that you get sidled with in certain upbringings. And being friends with those theater kids helped me unpack a lot of that. And All Ghosts definitely helped me unpack a lot of that. That they, as teachers and mentors, and ultimately friends, were always like pushing us to rethink the assumptions that we came in with. So not only were they giving us all these tools to express ourselves, but they're saying like, you need to use these tools to like wake up a little bit to your ideology. They didn't use these words, this term, but like to your ideology, all the frameworks that you have brought to this place that you don't need to take out of this place. They don't need to be with you forever. And I think after just talking for 10 or 15 minutes about them, you could sort of see where a lot of my style of proctoring conversations here comes from. Um, so just a little bit more about Tall Ghost. He's a big guy, like big guy. Like tall. It's in the name, tall, and just like an immense physical presence. Mrs. Ghost always called him the big guy. And so like he could be intimidating when he needed to be, but he never really was around us. He was a very soft person. Even though he was large and he had this big booming voice, this huge laugh that would echo through the auditorium. I remember him trying to teach us how to project, because when you're in high school, you don't want to project. You want to like disappear into yourself, and everyone's bad at projecting. But I remember him having us go all the way to the back of the auditorium, standing on stage and projecting at us. It'd be like, I'm just talking, but I'm sending my voice out so that it can reach you. And hugely charismatic, really, really funny guy. Um, love to talk about art. Love to play games. Introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons. All sorts of nerd properties that I had no idea about. Mystery Science Theater 3000 is another great example of a thing that we spent a lot of time doing together. At the time I was going to high school, that's when Lost was airing, and we all got really into Lost, and we would have Lost watching parties every week when the new episode came out. We'd go over to their apartment, which again was connected to the dormitories, and um, we'd watch the new episode of Lost. Mrs. Ghost would make her signature Rice Krispie treats, and if it wasn't too late afterwards, we'd like bandy about new theories about what just happened. At a younger age, my mom would pay if we wanted to go to the movie, but coming back, we could say it was good, it sucked. We had to say why. Yeah, it's good to it's good to tease those things out of kids because first of all, kids aren't used to adults actually being curious about them and wanting to listen. And I think like as a teacher or a mentor or a parent figure, the best thing you could do is like help your kids follow those impulses rather than squelch them or ignore them, you know? Okay, like you had a feeling about that thing you just watched. Say more about that. Do you think it was something in the movie or do you think that's something in you that you projected on the movie? What is that relationship about? What does it mean? So many good teachable moments if you're willing to listen to kids. And yeah, they were some of the first adults in my life who were like super invested in our internal world, not just in like what we meant, what we could do for them, or whatever. Um, yeah, so at my school, you ended up having, for better or for worse, a lot more of a personal relationship with the teachers since most of them lived on campus. And by the time I was graduating, I had gotten so close to the ghosts that we were basically like friends and everything but name because they still had to have a little bit of professional distance. It'd be like, we're your teachers still. But when we graduated, that changed, and they're like, okay, you're like our friends and essentially family to us. Because Mr. Ghost had been, and we didn't know this as we were going to school there, but he'd been struggling with cancer as he was teaching us, had to take some time off for chemo and that sort of thing. They kept that hidden pretty successfully and only really told us once we graduated. You know, I want to say it was around my sophomore year. He missed a lot of class for that and beat it. And by the time we graduated, they were like, yeah, this thing is in the past now, but we just want to tell you that's what was going on. And we also want to, you know, myself and two very good friends of mine, they sat us down and they were like, we want to tell you how much you meant to us over these 4 years, and how we consider you essentially our children at this point. And that's something that we knew that we had like felt, but it's still nice to hear it out loud in such a vulnerable way. So yeah, we graduated and all went on with our lives, and we would go back and periodically visit them. And they still teach at the same school. Tallghost, I think, taught there for around 20 years, which is that's amazing. Like the amount of lives that you touch when you teach somewhere for 20 years, that's a life really well lived. And I know that one thing that gives me peace is that I know that their influence is going to just ripple outwards um, for a very long time because it's rippling out through me and now it's rippling out through you. because like we're connected through a community. It's all right, Rossum. Thanks for listening, and I'm kind of running out of things to say, so I'm probably wrapping up here. But like we're all connected, and it's I rail against individualism because like what made me the way that I am? Not me, man. I didn't come out of the womb like this. It's people like Tall Ghost who made me the way I am. And there's 1,000 people in his life that made him the way that he was. And the best thing we could do is be conscious about our community connections, cultivate that, and like understand that we don't begin and end at the body that we occupy. It's especially important to remember in the case of a disease like cancer that makes your own body unrecognizable to you. It's, I think, really important to remember that that's not all that we are, not just our body. We also have our poop that comes out of our body. Checkmate, atheists. That's the real mark we leave behind us. So yeah, I would see them every so often. I would go back and visit. And I've introduced some other important people in my life to them over the years, and it had been a while since I'd seen them. They came and saw a play in Philadelphia that I directed, a clown show that I'm so glad that they got to see because they had a blast. They showed up with clown noses of their own, which flummoxed the clowns during the performance to see other clowns in the front row. And I think that may have been the last time that I had seen them, which was a good 5 years ago. Hadn't seen them since COVID. I got to go visit with him in the hospital briefly about a week ago. He was not particularly lucid, but I talked at him and maybe he could hear me. And I got to give Mrs. Ghost some important hugs and that sort of thing. So yeah, I guess that's about it. I wanted to share about Tall Ghost, his position in my life, how much of what he gave to me is also what I give to you all, and to as many people as I possibly can. And I don't know how to mourn. I've been pretty fortunate in my life to not have been beset by a lot of death and suffering. I've had people close to me die for sure. But I think nobody quite as close to my heart as this person, and I don't really know what to like. How do you mourn? I think you just keep living your regular life, except you're a little bit sadder than you were. That's the best I could tell. If anyone has any wisdom, I'd love to hear it. But yeah, let's just keep reflecting and refracting. Everybody has their own way to mourn. Yeah, that's ultimately the truth, right? I have to find it for myself. I can hear wisdom and advice. Some of it might work, some of it might not. I think continuing to participate in all those things that make me who I am because of my connection to them is a great way to go through a mourning process, I guess. He did not prepare you to mourn. Bad mentor. He would have liked that joke. Tallghost had a pretty sick sense of humor, I think. Very clever, very, very funny person. Yeah, there's like a brutal truth to that a mentor can't prepare you for everything. And that's another reason why I think giving people tools and a little bit of wisdom about how and when to use those tools is the way to go. Because you can kind of abstractly apply those tools to all sorts of situations. Yeah. Rest in peace, Tall Ghost. And okay, I'm gonna miss you a lot. And it's like a really, really beautiful, gregarious, willful person, stubborn person, even, who really thrived through the stuff that he cared about, whether it's games or like figurines. He painted little figurines, or watching bad movies and laughing with other people. And he faced a lot of health shit, and I think both the ghosts went through a lot of stuff that we didn't even know about, and like experienced depression and despair, but never let that affect their ability to like be there for other people, touch other people. It's really a gift to find someone like that, family but not family. Yeah. And I grew up with like a great family too. So to have a great family who let me down in some ways, because that's, anytime you're a parent, you're going to let your kid down. You're going to give them baggage that you didn't want to. To be able to have that supportive but flawed experience growing up, and then to go away from it at a scary time in my life, and to find what really felt like the next step of that, folks who could help me process that and lean into myself more. I don't know. What a gift. You're right to call it a gift, I think. I think that's pretty much all I have to say. Yeah. Rest in peace. I'll miss you very much. I'll always remember you, and we're all gonna figure out how to go on without you. Yeah, fuck cancer, man. Thanks for listening. Ugh. Yeah, so much pain for so little reason. Mm. Um, yeah, it doesn't make sense, and that's part of what's so difficult about mourning. You're always trying to make sense of it. You go through denial, and you go through like confusion, and you'd go through bargaining, and it's all about trying to make sense of something that you can't make sense of. Where can I raid you off to today? But yeah, that's what community is for. Holding people even when there's like nothing you can really say to them, or nothing you can do to fix it, you know? We can go to Messardion today. Bless you, chat. I'll be streaming as much as I'm feeling able these next couple weeks or so. Hi B. And bye B. um yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Velstorm resub today, and I think that's all that happened today. So thanks for that. And I'll catch you all later. Pay it forward, everybody. Like, think about the mentors in your lives who have done beautiful things for you, and it doesn't have to be a quid pro quo thing where you think about, oh, what can I do for someone else that's as good as that? Because I think oftentimes you won't know what makes sense until you're already thrust into a situation. You don't have to make it happen. You just have to be receptive to it. But yeah, remember that we're all just like pools of influence from all the important people in our lives, and the best we can do is figure out what we want to lean into and what we want to lean away from. But it's all still part of us regardless. Bye, y'all. Take care. Much love.